That's all right.
Finally!
We waited a long time for that. We don't need to be seen. We don't even need to be heard. Well, seen and not heard. I think it's short. Is there another compliment? Short. I can tell. I'll tell you, anyone who gets up to say anything after these original songsters must be really dumb. But I'm going to. And your name would be? Sure. Yes, Rudy.
I've been in plenty of bar rooms.
This is the one with the biggest brawl. That does intimidate me, I'll tell you. This is the first in a succession of celebrations of Rudy's retirement. I guarantee you, you are all lucky to be here because this is the best. This has got to be the best. His retirement, I struggle with that phrase. First, because it's an oxymoron. Rudy in retirement. It's also a contradiction, us celebrating his leaving. You see, Rudy, we think about us, leaving us, and as I keep telling our staff, it's all about us, finally. It is all about us. And celebrating the division, the campus, the provost staff, the college, without Rudy, we can't dwell on that picture. But Rudy, onto another phase of learning, of knowing well that Rudy will keep learning. I ought to know. We go back. Few of you know this. Kathy's one. We go way back to Duquesne days and to the summer of 1962. Rudy was, jeez. We're not as smart as we are old. Duquesne, the summer of 1962, maybe it was 63, Rudy, I'll give us that, at Duquesne University, and Rudy was dorm proctor and Irish campus nurse.
Oh, were you making that up?
I did have a life then. I did have a life. One time I had a life. And I saw Rudy, and I have to apologize publicly to Kathy, I saw Rudy almost daily that summer because he had the mumps. At his old age. And so, as you know, that's pretty serious. So I had to make visits daily.
She was a great nurse, let me tell you.
Oh, really? What's the criteria? Knowing Rudy as I came to know him and know him as we all know him now, I have a feeling he planned that. He planned having the mumps as an adult, as a learning experience. You know, he has to learn everything that comes along, so he had to get the mumps to learn about it. And he's been learning ever since. After graduation, we kind of lost track of each other until at least 11 years later. Well, it was 1973 when I walked into the orientation for new faculty, and there stood Rudy, mump-free. For years, we taught in the same division, the humanities division. The same characteristics and the same work habits that we all know of Rudy today, one saw in Rudy then. He was never still. He was never stationary. He taught music, he played piano, He took on chairmanships of every possible committee on campus and also across the college. He was in before dawn, and now you know about those emails. Because he didn't have email, and none of us did at that point, he had to be here physically, so he was. He was in before dawn and the last person to leave the building, and never without his trademark smile and his quick wit. What we didn't know is how quickly and how frequently all of that would be put to the test, as they say. The visual and performing arts was separated from humanities and became its own division. Rudy was still teaching then, but in 1977 he became the division chair. Now, none of the passages that Rudy has had have been a walk in the park. I think it all goes back to his father's advice when Rudy completed his PhD. Now, remember, he was one of one of five children. Staunch Italian, could you tell by the name? I'm good on clues. Staunch Italian background, hardworking parents, and you all know this already. His mother was classically trained as a pianist, and I think she also sang, didn't she, Rudy? And his father taught himself anything he knew on the piano. And the interesting thing is they played together, which I think is just pretty remarkable. But coming from this background, you would know that, or maybe you wouldn't know this line. I'll never forget when Rudy shared this with me because I knew even more about him then. He said he had struggled through getting the PhD finally, having put himself through undergrad and probably part of grad school playing jazz piano in bars. And I was going to ratchet it up with bars. His father looked at him after this great accomplishment and said, "Now just don't screw up." And screw up he did not. He came from a formidable background, and I think he carries that with him. There is a line in a Beckett play, Leslie would probably be able to tell me which one, in which a character notes, "To be buried in lava and not turn a hair, it is then that a man shows what stuff he's made of." For Rudy, it wasn't lava, it was asbestos. And his handling of what was truly a crisis was not only admirable, it was rather unbelievable, because he not only managed everything that went with this crisis, finding places for the classes, finding where we were going to put the computers and the rest of the equipment, making sure that the students weren't wasted and that they didn't have to go through any more hardships than that kind of crisis would clearly make. But in addition to all of these things that were so daily, Rudy volunteered to manage the abatement that followed. He actually took on that hat. Again, I suspect it was because it was a learning experience. Not quite like the monks. He had a lot of other trials and tribulations, as I say. His passages heretofore have not been a walk in the park. We have called him from time to time. You had actually a crown before that we never really gave to you, Rudy, and it was Ambassador of Abatement. And I think he actually wrote the book on crisis management. And those crises included the explosion of the electrical panel in Tyler, the aftermath and closure, and unscheduling and rescheduling of classes when the water main was clipped, the electrical lines were severed, strange odors filled the photo lab and beyond. And when a voyeur was caught doing his own arrangement of the ceiling tiles in the ladies' bathroom. He managed all, believe me, with professionalism, with the energy that we all have seen and know, and the wonderful and ever-present sense of humor. Why are they laughing? He also, I know, saved us from more catastrophes with Schlesinger than we've already had, because he was the ever-watchful eye on Schlesinger from the time that they cleared the path for the building to its current almost now finished. How many times have I had to say that? And he really has given us a gift that we would never have had without him, which is many gifts. But this one related to the Schlesinger Center is that we have a visual history of the Schlesinger Center construction because of Rudy's little brownie camera that moved up to, quickly moved up to digital. And it is because of him that we have that history. Because of Rudy's calm under fire, his thinking ahead, his organizational skills, and most importantly, I think his people skills. Because of all of these wonderful virtues, students endured no parking, artists carried portfolios down the hill, tuba players wore their instruments like new tumors on their backs, faculty worried very little about health issues that clearly they could have been very, very concerned about. He was a calming influence always, no matter what the crisis. To the provost staff, he brought a model that has resulted in a balanced budget every year since its application. He brought a thoughtful approach to problem solving, a rigorous but fair-minded model for faculty evaluation that we have all borrowed from and rarely given him a footnote. He brought a harmonious and productive division out of the most eclectic curricular programs. Is my time up? Yes, I appreciate the subtlety, baby.
The harmony of the division.
And his tenure warranted evaluations from faculty that used words like perfect, inspiring, supportive, don't ever let him leave. How have I failed? For me, Rudy, you have been a role model, a teacher, a mentor, a trusted colleague, and a very special friend whose absence at the campus will leave not only a hole in the division, but a hole in my professional and personal life at the campus. But it's better said, and probably with more control, by Thoreau, who said, "There is no more fatal blunder than a person who consumes his life getting his living." Who consumes his life getting his living. And so now, Rudy, you don't have to worry about getting your living. You can go on and live. Outside the campus, and we hope at times still with us here, you will always be there in spirit and memory, and you leave so many footprints that it would seem you were a centipede.
Thank you, Bob.
Ben, do we need to let you go and come back? Do we need to go on and do something else?
No, we're good.
Oh, I forgot, I have
President, you want to give them? Barbara's the president.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got so emotional, I forgot. Oh, one more time, Kathy. Okay, well, let me go this way. I'll just serve the whole room, not just that. This is a light present. The heavies come later, Rudy, although it's a little weighty.
My mother told me that we...
Well, yeah, but you can take them both out. There are two, and you'll see why. Kathy, I'd hate to be with you at Christmas.
See, when you were young, you were a very poor family, so you
You only had one present! And you passed it around.
Yeah, sure. You felt it, you smelled it, everything.
Oh, my.
Rudy, the 5 kids working with somebody else.
I want to make sure the other one matches.
Don't take him out.
Next, we have a